Boston College football is getting ready for their next big month, official visit season. But where do things stand with the Eagles? I'll give you all the updates that you want for BC football recruiting on today's show.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider and the host of this great podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, on today's episode, we have two segments. We're going to get into recruiting. I'm going to look at the general state of where things are at as we head into official visit season for college football. We'll get into what's the deal with the quarterback situation in terms of recruiting. And I want to give you an update on that antitrust lawsuit and what it could mean to some smaller programs at BC. Plus, a little talk about women's lacrosse, too, as they have a big game on Friday. So, BC recruiting. I think when Bill O'Brien was hired, there was a expectation that you're bringing in a name with recognition across the country that recruiting would take off. And you're heading into a big month where, according to folks at a fundraising dinner yesterday, there's going to be 60 official visits. I'm aware of about 40 to 45. So that must mean there's some quiet ones that we just don't know about. But there's going to be a lot of folks descending on Boston College with, their parents and getting ready to decide what school they want to go to. The majority of this class most likely will be done a month from today. You usually, if you're BC, you get 75, 80% of your class. So there could be 10, 12, 15 recruits committing in the next month. So it's a big month to look forward to. But in order to move forward, you got to look at what's going on. So I wanted to kind of give you some of the main storylines of what's going on with BC football recruiting. A big one, I think a lot of what folks are looking at is local recruiting. Jeff Hafley, Bill O'Brien has done a good job of recruiting locally, adding recruits like Griffin Collins, Micah Amity, Marcelino and Tunalunas from Catholic Memorial in the class of 26. He's landed some local recruits, but he's still up against it with some of the bigger names and has some work to do. As we said, today, if you're listening on Friday, Tommy Rupley is going to commit, and I am very close to putting in a crystal ball for Duke. He's going to probably end up at Duke. You're going to lose that one. Samson Onawaha, his teammate from Belmont Hills, also with Duke. Hardy Watts, not sure where he's going to end up, but he's got two official visits already set up. One's to Wisconsin, one is to Michigan. That's going to be a tough one. So this talk about building a fence around New England, he's already starting to see that it's going to be a challenge, and I think that's fair. Now there's plenty of New England, recruits that are out there. I look at like Jordan Houston at St. Thomas More. I look at, there's a bunch of quarterbacks coming up in the class of 26 and 27, like Osiris Lopez and Karan McNeil and the kid from St. John's Prep. There's a lot of other kids that he's going to have to start landing. But in order to do that, BC is going to have to raise up their profile a little bit, and that's going to be winning a little bit. Because there's coaches out there that, they don't see BC at the same level as a Duke. They don't see BC as the same level as a Wake Forest. And that's tough for the coaching staff to overcome. But that's the way some of these coaches think. Like, they're going to want to get their kids to a school that's better so they can raise their own profile. And they're not doing any favors to BC. So there's going to be a little bit of a challenge there, right? That's one piece. The next big storyline is the class is better already than last year. Now, if you go to 247 and you look at the ratings, there was one recruit that had a rating of 89 last year, and that was Pape Sai, which I think is incredible because it's a kid that played 1 year of football, and he was rated higher than everyone else on their recruiting class. But apparently the scouts liked it, so he was higher, and he's higher than anyone BC has right now. But every single person on this recruiting class is higher than all but Pape Sai and Saia Torrance. They're all higher. So that's a good sign. You have tons of 87s, rate, mid to that's like a mid to upper 3-star. So you're getting more quality players. Even if you look at like a guy like Micah Amity or Griffin Collins, the offers may not be there. I mean, Griffin Collins only had Syracuse. Micah Amity doesn't have anything. But talking to some scouts, Amity is a real deal. And if BC didn't pounce on him when they did, he would have got more offers. So that's another piece, is that this class is getting bigger and it's getting better. I think that you're seeing it. Right now, the class is rated at 49th in the country. That's not that far off from what you would like for a goal. Like if BC had a recruiting class of around 40, that's a huge improvement of last year. And honestly, for many, I think it'd be higher than anything Jeff Halfley ever had. So I think that's another piece to look at. Another piece in terms of where they're recruiting, they're still kind of doing what they did under Halfley, which is recruiting all over the place. You have guys like Darrell Wyatt, who's going to recruit the South and specifically Texas for his wide receivers. That's what he does. He also opens the door to a lot of Texas schools for other positions as well. You're seeing that as well. You're seeing different areas around the country that are getting emphasized, though, because of the new staff. Jeff Commission, the defensive line coach, is heavy in the Midwest, specifically Indiana. Indiana is not a state that I think of as a place that BC's been really active in. And he's got a couple guys like Israel Aladapapu, a defensive end. He's from Indiana. There's a couple other guys. There's I think Cameron Herring, the offensive lineman. He's got a bunch of guys that are coming in from that area. You also bring in Ray Brown, and Ray Brown, he's opening up Oklahoma, which I mean, tell me the last recruit that BC landed from the state of Oklahoma. And they've got Deontay Lindsay, a defensive back coming in, and they've been involved with a couple others they've been offering. So they've been, there's a place that they've been active in. California, obviously, you've seen more with Ohio. And less of I honestly think there's been less of an emphasis in the DMV area now that Azar Abdul Rahim is gone. So it's still a across the map, like trying to, and a lot of them are Catholic schools, trying to hit those recruits across the country. It's just different areas than what we expected and have seen under Halfley. I think that is the last piece there. Now, as I said on the site, I expect this class to be about 25. It's going to be a full class. They're going to get most likely, based off of the numbers I've heard for each position, it should be between 23 to 25 recruits. You're getting a lot, as I said, up to 60 official visits, according to what Bill O'Brien said at that fundraiser. I right now they're at 40 something on 247, but I also know there's a bunch that they've been working off, that hasn't been announced. And I honestly, they would never say it to me because they got to keep themselves quiet. But I imagine I would not be surprised at the least if there's a handful that are committed elsewhere. That's not anything new. It's just they like to keep those quiet. Those kids are not going to go and publicize that with the official visit photoshops that they all use. They're going to keep it quiet. I would bet you that there's going to be at a variety of positions people that have been committed elsewhere. And the reason why I think it's a lot of positions is Bill O'Brien's, getting into this game late, and his whole defensive staff is getting into this late. So there's guys that have already committed elsewhere that they may have watched tape and went, "Oh man, this guy's good," and then reached out to him, and they're like, "Oh, we might be interested." That recruit might be like, "I'm still interested in checking out BC." So don't be surprised if there's a surprise as well, because I think there is. I think there'll be quite a few surprises, and I wouldn't be surprised if you come under Eagle Insider and read my previews of each weekend, if I still don't know who it is when I talk to the staff about who's coming, because they're not going to tell me. They're going to keep it quiet. They have to. You don't want to get that reputation out front that there's guys going elsewhere to check your school, guys from elsewhere coming to check out your school. Now, in our next segment, I want to get into the quarterback position because there of any position there has been no news. I want to kind of tell you where things are at, what I've heard, and what I'm expecting. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. It's winner take all time in the NBA or NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. You're watching the Celtics game, you get the most current odds. You can get the second half odds. Like right now, I think the Celtics are only up by a couple, but maybe you think Indianapolis is going to come back, or Indiana is going to come back and win this. You can go on to FanDuel and get those second half odds right now. Or if you think the Celtics are going to pull away, you can get those odds. You just think about it, you can get it. You think that, I mean, like, just go on there right now. You could get Jason Tatum second half points, Miles Turner second half rebounds. The options are endless. That's what I love about FanDuel. And that if you sign up today, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 in bets on money line, spread, player props, and much more. So visit fanduels.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. And we're doing a big old recruiting roundup here for these first two segments. I gave you the roundup of some of the storylines going around with this class in the first segment. Now I want to look at a position that is shrouded in secrecy, and that is the quarterback position. Now, I have asked and asked and asked and asked and asked and asked for any info on quarterbacks, and it's only been confirming the negatives, basically, when I ask. So I know one thing. The BC is going to take at least one quarterback and possibly two in this upcoming class. Now, who those targets are, if you could, what I would say is a big shrugging emoji. I don't know, because the if they are going after undercommitted players, they're being quiet about it. If there are other players out there that maybe are someplace else, they're not going to say anything. The staff doesn't want to say anything, so we're all in the dark. I do know from talking to people that the expectation is that there's going to be at least a couple quarterbacks coming for official visit season. Now, if you go to Eagle Insider and look at my official visit list, you'll notice that none of them are quarterbacks because I don't know who they are. I have a feeling that the names that we're going to hear could be exciting. I don't know who they're going to be, but I get a feeling if they're guarding it the way that they're guarding it, this is going to be more than a Jonathan Montague. This is going to be more than a Jacoby Robinson, and not a knock on those kids, but you didn't have to guard their recruitment if you wanted them. No one was going after Jonathan Montague that hard. No one was going after Jacoby Robinson that hard. To me, the silence speaks volumes that there's something exciting, something worth paying attention to at this quarterback position. And the one name that has been popping up, again, we're ruling things out more. Like when you're not feeling good, instead of like knowing exactly what's going on, doctors may rule out things. This is kind of what we're at with the quarterback position. One name that you can rule out, and I put it up on the site earlier this week, so the VIPs had a head start on this, is it's not Mason Droop. Now, we've talked about Mason Droop here for a while. He came on a visit on his own dime for an unofficial during the spring. I don't know what happened, but he's not being recruited, or he's not a priority at this point. That surprised me. I thought BC really liked him. I thought last I had talked to Mason, he told me he thought he was in the process of making an official visit. I don't expect that to happen. So I would cross him off your list. Two other names to cross off your list based off of what I've heard and what they've said is Blake Hebert, he was at a local school. He's committed to Clemson. I had heard buzz that maybe he might be a guy that BC's interested in. He is very, very not interested in leaving Clemson. So there may be guys that you're able to flip. He's not going to be one of them. He is locked in tight at Clemson. He's not going anywhere. So that's one. The other one is Cole Gear. who is I think he was Deerfield Academy, I believe, who's committed to UVA. I've heard that this is not going to go anywhere either, and it's not the gear. I just feel like it's not. There's other guys that they're looking at more highly than him, so I don't think he's going to be a target. So those are three guys: Cole Gear, Blake Hibbert, and Mason Drube that you can take and throw into the recycling bin because they're not going to be guys they're looking at. So then, who is it? Who are they looking at? I'm not sure, and I'm very excited to see who they're going to go after because I still believe that a guy like Bill O'Brien, who has the experience as a with NFL quarterbacks like Tom Brady, Deshaun Watson, college coaches, even Matt McGloin, as I keep saying, like Matt McGloin had no reason to win a Big Ten Player of the Year. Bill O'Brien coached him up. He has cachet with recruits, and I think he could get some big names here. I just don't know who they're going to be, and we're going to have to wait. And maybe this is all going to pop up. I think what I would expect. We're all going to be in the dark unless a kid lets it slip, or I get I get the golden ticket and they actually reveal it to me. But I think it's going to be a kid letting it slip, or we will actually just find out when they commit. That could happen as well. But the fact that they could be looking at two quarterbacks and we still don't know a single target is a credit to the staff. It's frustrating as someone who covers it to not know anything. And I'm sure it's frustrating for you who's like, this is the most important position on the roster. Why won't they tell me anything about this? I get it, but maybe this will help in the end. Maybe this will help them land a target and keep, the other program or other programs that are looking at them from using that against BC, and that might end up helping them land him. I'm not sure. That's where things are at, though. Now, in our final segment, I want to look at that antitrust lawsuit that just wrapped up 3 different lawsuits, wrapped them all together, and we'll be paying out a massive amount. There's one group of players that this could really impact, and I want to talk about them in just a moment. Now, I love going to games. I love going to, you know, baseball, minor league baseball, whatever I can get my hands on tickets, I love going. Now, with Game Time, they have killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantees. And they take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. What I mean by taking the guesswork is one, you're going to know where your seats are. They have viewfinders. You can see what you're going to see. Like sometimes you look at the numbers on in letters and you're like, oh, I've got row A. And then you get to the stadium and you're like, row A is like way past the nosebleeds and the I can't see anything zone. They get rid of all that. You know exactly what you're going to be paying for. And for most of their tickets, they also have their all-in price, which means all the fees and all the other stuff is thrown in there. You know exactly what you're paying. That is taking the guesswork out. That will make you confident that Game Time is the place to go to get your tickets. So go to Game Time right now. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED ONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Locked On Boston College, AJ back. Before we get into our last segment, I want to shout out the women's lacrosse team who will be playing on Friday in another matchup against the Syracuse Orange. In this matchup, if they win, they go to the national championship game where they most likely will play Northwestern, who's the best team in the country. But that would be another massive coup for them. It's a big game for a program that continues to be successful. So good luck to all of them. I know a lot of folks out there are really big lacrosse fans and really like watching this team. So I hope that, that Acacia Walker gets them back to another national title game because it just shows you how important this program is. Now, on Thursday night, the last of the 5 major conferences, they can still count the Pac-12 as a major conference, signed off on that antitrust lawsuit that combined them all, and basically they're going to start the process of paying players formally. work through revenue sharing. Now, that is a great thing for football players. It's a great thing for basketball players. But one group that this may impact are the Olympic sports. I look at the teams, I have softball up there as one, that are going to get impacted this, and I think of the Olympic sports because what's the the coins, the other side of the coin for this whole situation? Yes, players are going to get paid. They're not going to be part of this giant grift that doesn't pay them anything. But these giant schools that are used to getting millions and millions of dollars infused into their programs through media deals, through all these other, things that go on, are going to have a giant slice of that cut off to be paying players. Now, many of these programs rely on that money to pay for their non-revenue sports. And yes, some of those non-revenue sports are getting, I saw Bud Elliott tweeting like this is going to end one of the giant grifts where like softball player, coaches at some schools that are getting paid millions of dollars when they don't, it doesn't balance with what they're bringing in. That's going to all end. But I look at a school like BC, right? That's a very different story. BC has 30 plus varsity level teams on their roster. I put up earlier this week a number that showed that BC was like fourth or fifth in the ACC in terms of paying for those non-revenue sports. They pay a lot. Now, we know what BC is like. They're not the most liberal with their money, and that they're going to take away some of the money that they use to pay for that is a scary thing. And I don't know what this is going to mean for the school. I don't see BC cutting sports because of it, but I worry that the funding that goes into these programs is going to get cut drastically. Maybe they'll still be still competing, but they're going to cut corners, whether it's paying their staff less or cutting out recruiting trips, little things here and there. My hope is that a school like BC can look at all the money that they bring in, that they just stuff and stuff and stuff, and are able to absorb it because the school is freaking loaded when you look at like their endowment and all the money that they bring in, and be able to keep their status quo. That's my hope, because for far too long, they don't bring in the money. The swim team doesn't bring in the money, and the cross country team, but when you bring them in and you put the money into it, you want to be able to win. You don't want to see these programs just disappear. And as a private school, you should have the flexibility to figure out ways to get it to work. You should be able to find out ways in your own budgets to get these teams that if you think that they're important to keep, you find the money to keep them. And maybe the things change. Maybe the staff then realizes, okay, the gig is up with this stuff. Maybe this is the time where we start looking at, these are programs that we're just not going to be able to afford anymore. I don't see BC doing that though. I don't. I know some folks like, yeah, they're going to see them cut programs. I just don't see them doing it. But I do worry. And I worry for not just BC, but there's athletes across the country. Many of either you did or some of you have friends that played Olympic sports, that played non-revenue sports, and at schools across the country. And I look at schools like Florida State who find the money to be able to sue the ACC nonstop, but can't afford to do much else other than their football program. They're a prime example to me of a school that we be looking at like cutting things because they'd rather just keep that gravy train going with football and not really worry about golf or whatever. So I think that's something to watch. I think that is going to be something that could be a negative factor of this new antitrust lawsuit in the way that we're going to revenue share with football players and the big revenue teams, is that those little guys are going to be the ones that get hurt. This is AJ Black. I will be back again on Monday as we get ready for official visits for college football. Excuse me. We'll give you names. We'll talk about what's going on, give you all things that you need to know. And plus, we'll have Mitch again on next week. He was sick all week, and we'll have him back on again next. Thank you for following along. I hope you all have a great long weekend and happy Memorial Day and all that. So have a great one, and we'll see you again on Monday for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.